Welcome back to Lit by the Fire. My name's Ryan, and today we're going to be having quite a treat. I will be reading from a book I wrote a good 20 years ago called Song of the Sunbird. Now, take a trip down memory lane with me. I was 22 years old, fresh out of college. I had read a bunch of classic works of literature, including Dante, the Divine Comedy, and C.S. Lewis, and Plato and his cave analogy. And I thought, wow, we need to make more children's literature like this. And this set me on a path to writing this book. I also dedicated this book to my sister. And as we begin, this is the cover. The illustration was done by a good family friend, Marcy Keithan. And as we begin, I will go ahead and read that dedication to you. This book was written especially for my sister, Chelsea. I wanted to celebrate again all the memories of our youth together. The best place I found to do this was in a little-known world called the Empyrean. Getting there will take some effort and perhaps a little grace, but we'll look out for each other. There's a letter to read and a sunbird to see when you're ready to go. And with that, we will read this book for the next couple of sessions. And yeah, we'll go right into it. Enjoy. Song of the Sunbird. Chapter 1. How They Opened the Basement Door. Grandpa had a big house. When Charlie and Susie first saw it, their jaws dropped. Grandpa's house was twice as tall as their house back home. It was built out of oak and stone, set upon the mountainside, and surrounded by thick green woods. Every summer, the kids would stay with Grandpa for a whole month, something they looked forward to all year. Once their clothes were unpacked and Mom and Dad had said goodbye, Charlie and Susie would start exploring the grounds for new treasures and secret passageways. Grandpa did not mind because he was sleeping most of the time. He took 2 naps every day. This gave the kids a chance to explore without being watched or lectured. Charlie, a boy almost 10 years old, enjoyed the outdoors very much. He loved to ride bikes and swim and play sports. Grandpa's backyard was perfect because it extended for acres in every direction. The first thing Charlie did when he had had breakfast was put Grandpa's old compass in his pocket. The compass was made of tarnished brass, and the lid was decorated with a symbol of a great bird. Grandpa called it a sunbird. With it, Charlie could go for hikes through the woods and not get lost. He was not allowed to go beyond the fence, but he could still go pretty far. He planned to build an awesome tree fort with Grandpa someday. Grandpa said that he needed to eat more fiber to be fit for it. Susie, Charlie's 8-year-old sister, liked to spend her time indoors. Everything about Grandpa's house fascinated her. There were oil paintings on the walls, a spiral staircase, and chair cushions so big that your legs would stick straight out. She knew the house well. Susie could easily hide from her brother in empty cupboards when they played games together. Any time of the year, she could remember the smell of Grandpa's house. And the best part of all was her bed. The 4 knobs of the frame were carved into tiny animals, an eagle and a robin on one end, a bear and a mole on the other. The bed sheets were a beautiful blue color and had the portrait of the sun smiling at her. Grandpa had made the bed himself when he was a younger man. There was only one place in the whole house both kids had never been: the basement. If you walked down the hall and turned left, there was an opening so narrow Charlie and Susie could not fit shoulder to shoulder inside. A line of steps descended to a simple white door with a large keyhole. The door, of course, was locked tight. Both kids took turns squinting through the keyhole, but it was completely dark inside. To make matters worse, Grandpa would not tell them a single thing about the basement. He acted like he never heard them talking about it. So the kids imagined all sorts of things that could be in the basement: old maps and piles of jewels, or guns and ammo, or antique furniture covered in cobwebs. Susie liked to pretend there were no spiders in the basement. Of all the scary things that hid in the dark, spiders were for her the worst. Spiders did not bother Charlie. He planned to capture them in a jar and keep them as pets. Though Charlie and Susie had different interests, they always played together. Sometimes spending so much time with each other was annoying. The first couple of days at Grandpa's house were fun because the kids had so much to do and look at. But too soon, they would become bored and get into an argument. This summer was no exception. This year, Charlie was finishing elementary school, and now he was too old to play with his own sister. "I'm playing outside," he complained. "Why don't you go play somewhere else?" "Quit being mean," Susie replied. "We need to play together, Charlie." "There's nothing to do," he moaned. "We've been upstairs, we've been outside, we've seen the bear rug, we've seen everything." "We haven't seen the basement yet," she suggested. "Maybe we could try to find the key." "We already tried that," Charlie said. It was true. While Grandpa was napping yesterday, they had searched every drawer, cupboard, nook, and cranny for the basement key. All they managed to find was the lost Monopoly money Charlie stole last year. Susie sighed. "Well then, what do you want to do?" "I don't know. What do you want to do?" he mimicked her. Yep, it was quickly turning into an argument. Suddenly, Grandpa, who had been hearing all this, stepped out onto the porch and leaned on his skinny cane. He called out, "Charlie, Susie." Now, Grandpa's voice was loud and crotchety, like most old folks, but he was as good-natured as a teddy bear. "Come inside, I have something to show you." At that moment, both brother and sister forgot their disagreement and ran up to the house. Did Grandpa have chocolates or marshmallows for them? Charlie and Susie got to eat lots of candies since their parents were not around. Now, Grandpa always said he needed to walk with a cane because of his arthritis. You would think it would slow an old man down. However, the kids had the hardest time keeping up with him. As soon as their eyes adjusted to the indoor light, he had already disappeared. The rap-tap-tap of his cane echoed in the next room. So the kids ran on and found him nearly at the top of the staircase. When they had climbed the stairs, he was already down the hall. "Wait up, Grandpa," said Susie out of breath. "Hurry up, then," Grandpa replied with a twinkle in his eye. "It's almost time for my nap." Finally, the kids entered the room at the end of the hall. It was Grandpa's study. Usually they were not allowed to go inside because Grandpa had many valuable books. The books covered the walls from the ceiling down and spilled over on the floor. Most were brightly colored and arranged into groups, but a few were old and dusty, as if they had not been read for 100 years. They found Grandpa sitting at his desk, lighting his pipe. Mom did not like that he smoked in front of the children. Charlie and Susie thought it just made Grandpa stinky. The children sat down quietly. On the desk, level with their eyes, was a thick leather Bible that looked like it would fall apart if you opened it. On the top of the cover, in a patch of light, lay a big iron key. The kids had never seen it before. Now, the key did not look like your everyday house key or car key. It had a great round loop on one end and two metal prongs on the other in the shape of a bird's beak. Grandpa did not say what it was about. He began to monologue instead. "When I was your age, we didn't have summers. We went to school every day, even on holidays." Grandpa often exaggerated his stories, so the kids knew not to trust everything he said. "We didn't want our brains to melt in the sticky summer sun. We wanted to become productive and be like our parents and our parents' parents. That's why I have all these books, you see." He wildly gestured to the books on every wall. I read all day and I read all night. I knew my long division and my geography. And eventually they called me Doctor, Grandpa, and gave me this. Grandpa reached into his desk drawer and pulled out a shiny glass frame with a fancy piece of paper inside. It looked like the kid's kindergarten diploma, except there were no pictures on it, and you could not read the handwriting. Charlie looked confused. Is this what you had to show us, Grandpa? He said. Of course not, Grandpa retorted, and he quickly shoved the old frame aside. Now listen. They invented summers for a good reason. I was in school so long my joints stiffened and my brain hardened into a nugget. When I graduated and entered the real world, I didn't know what to do with myself, so I became a teacher, of course. He chuckled to himself. Grandpa often made jokes which only he thought were funny. When you get to be my age, you look back and wonder about your life. Did you learn from your mistakes? And did you tell your grandkids about the important stuff? The kids could see that Grandpa was really onto something. His ears were red, his cheeks droopy, and his great blue eyes looked a little worried or unsure. He patted his forehead with a white handkerchief. How a sleepy old man could get so worked up, they had no idea. You kids need to know about the brain, he continued. The brain is like a great house. There's a left side, there's a right side, and there's the basement. For some reason, Grandpa paused on the word. The kids wondered what he meant by it. On the left side, there's where you keep your textbooks, your encyclopedias, your books about science and measurements and math. On the right side is where you keep your coloring books, your mystery books, and all those made-up stories about adventures and romance. And then there's the basement. Again, Grandpa paused. He glanced down at the iron key on the desk and then looked up at the kids. They stared into his eyes, aching for the next word. The basement, he continued, is the part of the brain no one seems to know about. You don't put books in the basement. You don't put anything in there. You discover what's been in there from the beginning. I wish they'd have taught me this in school. It would have made things so much more interesting. Now, Grandpa leaned in and whispered, most people find the basement door locked tight. If only they knew where to find the key. Charlie's heart pounded in his chest. Susie got chills all down her back. Suddenly, Grandpa pulled back and frowned. There, I've done all I can for you two. Now get out of here. I need to be alone. With that, he swiveled around in his chair and blew smoke rings into the wall. Charlie and Susie looked at each other in amazement. There was nothing left to do but stare at Grandpa's bald spot. They dared not say a word. On the ancient cover of the Bible, the key flickered in the sunlight, tempting Charlie to take hold of it. Grandpa had not given him permission. Should he risk it? Susie grit her teeth in suspense and watched what Charlie would do. Very quietly, the boy reached forward and wrapped his fingers round the key. It was cold and heavy. There was only one purpose for a key such as this, to open the door to Grandpa's basement. The children snuck out of the study and could already hear Grandpa snoring inside. Relief. Susie sighed and whispered to her brother, I wonder what's gotten into Grandpa. Beats me, Charlie said, but I'm dying to know what he's got locked in the basement. Charlie, wait up! Next thing she knew, Susie was running to keep up with her brother. He dashed ahead with the key and did not even leave the doors open for her. It made her mad when he left her behind. A moment later, her anger evaporated, for she stood at the top of the cellar stairs. Only a few steps below, Charlie examined the basement door. Now, the door stood tall and thin in the narrow passage. It would have been completely bare had Grandpa not attached a delicate wooden chime near the top. The kids measured their growth each summer by seeing how many strings they could reach up and pluck. The chime rested on a circular cut of wood covered with tree rings. Beautiful carvings of mountains, clouds, and kingdoms surrounded the knotted core. The middle string, the one that passed through the core, made the sweetest sound of them all. Unable to wait any longer, Charlie turned the key in the rusty lock. With a little effort, it clicked in place. The basement door unlatched, groaning and moaning as it opened like the mouth of a woolly-bearded giant. A warm wind rushed into their faces, strumming a whimsical melody on the chime. Suddenly, both kids felt like they had slipped into a dream. Singing came from within the basement, drifting from an ocean miles away. Come inside, O children of sun-born face, and trade thy games of strife for games of grace. The hour approaches for thee to see, the song of the sunbird sings over thee. Come below, O children, through passage dim, into the heartlands wide open to him. Sunlight and splendor that makes all things free, the song of the sunbird sings over thee. Come homeward, O children, from dark of night. Follow not the magic that blinds thy sight. Sunlit clouds wherein love is the decree, the song that the sunbird sings over thee. Even though Charlie and Susie heard the song, they were unable to grasp it. It drifted away into the basement of their brain, if you will. Meanwhile, the kids' attention remained wholly fixed on the open doorway. Inside, it was pitch black. Something jumped into Susie's mind. "Charlie," she cried, "what if there are spiders?" "Then we'll have to squish them," he said. Both kids slowly stepped through the doorway, and the darkness swallowed them up. No sooner had they gone in, but another unexpected thing happened. The basement door swung shut behind them, leaving Charlie and Susie trapped in the dark basement. They could not see a thing. "Charlie, where'd you go?" Susie said with a bit of fright in her voice. "Shh, it's okay, sis," her brother replied. "We have to find a light switch or something." "Can't you open the door again?" she asked. Charlie's stomach sunk as he realized he had left the key in the lock on the other side of the door. They were trapped inside, at least until Grandpa came and found them. But if Grandpa was beginning his nap, they could be stuck for quite some time. Charlie was very embarrassed at his mistake, so he tried to make the most of it. "Let's find the light first," he told Susie. "It will be fun. Besides, you'll want to leave if we open the door now." Charlie felt along the wall in the dark. It was rough and cold, as if it had been chiseled out of the mountainside. The ground, too, was uneven, so he watched his footing carefully. No sign of a light switch. Susie kept near the doorway and listened in the dark for spiders. The hairs on the back of her neck stood straight up. She thought she heard a voice. "What's that?" she whispered breathlessly. Both kids stared into the darkness. Somewhere deep in the basement, someone or something was speaking. Chapter 2. Visitors from the Inside. "What's wrong with the light?" a twittering voice sang from inside the basement. Charlie and Susie did not know whether to answer or stay silent. As it turned out, the voice was not talking to them at all, but to another voice hiding in the darkness. "I think I got a clod of dirt jammed in it when we broke through," a hearty voice echoed in reply. "How we will ever find them in the dark, Gregory, and with your sense of direction, I have no idea," the first voice returned. "Can't say it was the most pleasant trip underground," said the second with a snort. "But look on the bright side, digging's dangerous work, and we still have our toes." "Now you're just being irritating," chirped the first. "Where is that lamp? Will it help if I peck at it?" The kids heard a series of knocks, like the sound of tapping on a hollow box. "Ow, Archie, cut it out! You're giving me a headache!" Suddenly, a thin beam of light appeared from deep within the basement. The kids could now see that the basement was not your typical room with four walls, a ceiling, and a floor. It was an empty cave that stretched forward into the belly of the earth. The light came from a distance of about 20 yards, a stone's throw away. At first, the children thought the mysterious voices had turned on a flashlight, but the instrument was actually fixed on some poor critter's head, or more accurately, on his yellow hard hat. In the path of the light, the kids noticed a small flying bird wearing the most elaborate costume. A miniature red vest with golden buttons was pinned around his scrawny neck. For a hat, he wore a red pointed cap with a golden feather. The feather was nearly twice the size of the whole bird. It looked ridiculous. "Leave it to me to get us out of this mess," the bird seemed to tweet out of his tiny beak. He perched on the creature's hard hat and spun his head almost completely round. He was apparently looking for something. Charlie and Susie were hiding in the shadows, trying not to be seen. Susie quietly whispered the question that was on both of their minds. "Charlie, are the animals talking?" "Don't be silly. That's impossible," her brother replied, a bit too loud. The furry creature with the headlamp heard him and swung the light in their direction. "Archie, what's that over there?" The kids squinted and blocked the light with their hands. They were found out. "You're shining it in their eyes, you blind dolt," the bird cried. But for once, Gregory, you're pointed in the right direction. Let's go meet them." "Holy moly!" the creature named Gregory mumbled as he bounded forward on all fours. Immediately, Charlie reached for the door handle, but it was no use. Locked. There was no escape. They would have to greet the approaching animals. Frankly, Charlie did not know what to say. The thought of talking to an animal and an animal talking back, it was too childish. After all, he had learned in school that it is simply impossible for animals to talk. Perhaps they were puppets and the whole thing was a clever trick. Susie, on the other hand, was a simpler girl. That she had found talking animals in the basement instead of a giant spider relieved her greatly. Animals were especially familiar to her, and from what she could tell, these two were friendly. As the creatures drew near, it was Susie who decided to speak up. "Excuse me," she said timidly, "who might you be? I've never seen a parrot who could talk so well." "Well, that is because I am certainly not a parrot," the bird corrected, and with a stately trill, "I am a robin, you see, a royal robin, to be more precise. My name is Prince Archibald III, heir to the clouded kingdoms, citizen of the Empyrean, and guardian of the true sun." For a small bird, he was mighty important. The robin tucked a wing under his chin, bowed. The golden feather drooped forward and got in the other's face, causing him to sneeze. "And I'm Gregory the Mole," the other stated once he had recovered himself. Susie could now see the mole's whiskery beard sticking out from under his oversized helmet. He wore yellow suspenders that hung loosely over his shoulders and held up his baggy trousers. Glassy goggles were strapped around his head, making him look like a crash test dummy. "A mole?" Susie remarked. "I've never met a talking mole before." "Oh, I've never met a talking man before," Gregory said. Susie giggled. "Oh, I'm not a man. I'm a girl. My name's Susie, and this is my brother Charlie." And with special emphasis, she added, "He's not a man either. He's a boy." Charlie immediately felt defensive. "I am not a boy. I'm a guy." Pleased to meet you, Charlie Guy. The mole thrust his arm out, and Charlie shook the mole's grubby paw. It was covered in dirt. Charlie took back his hand and wiped it off when no one was looking. The robin Archibald whispered in Gregory's ear, "These are the two I told you about." Then he addressed the kids. "Sorry I kept you waiting. The tunnel was in need of repairs, and I hired Gregory here to dig me through. Then he missed an important turn and nearly trapped us both in Greenland. His eyesight's not so good, you see." "I'm as blind as they come," Gregory lamented from behind his useless goggles. "But on the bright side, I've got terrific hearing." "Now you're probably wondering why we're here," Archibald continued hurriedly. "You see, only hours ago, I was soaring the clouds, minding my own business, when a messenger pigeon called, 'Prince Archibald, the king will see you at once.' I'm always eager to serve, so I flew immediately to the high court of the clouded kingdom, the place nearest the sun. There, perched on the throne, I found the great eagle Gaylord. Now, Gaylord is at least 15 times bigger than the biggest eagle you've ever seen. The royal feather in my cap is one of his. He gives them to the 12 princes of the clouds." "Just between us," the mole added, "Gaylord is the happiest, most hilarious eagle under the sun, and awfully intimidating to be around for that reason." The robin nodded. "You'll understand why I hurried to meet him in the first place. The king greeted me and said, 'Prince Archibald, thank you for coming so quickly to my aid. Oh, I have an important task that only you can fulfill. You are to go underground to the land of Earth. There you will find a Master Charles and a Miss Susan, and you are to fetch them to me. The Sunbird would like to see them both." And I was dismissed. Charlie and Susie looked at each other. The Sunbird? Who was he? Archibald continued, "Traveling underground is my least favorite thing to do, but who am I to refuse the Sunbird? So I hired this mole, and you know the rest. Any questions?" Well, Susie raised her hand. "If moles are blind, why does Gregory wear goggles and a headlight?" It was an honest question. Archibald let out a fluttering sigh. Her question was quite off topic. "Does it look like I would put on such ridiculous clothing?" the robin remarked, tossing his jumbo-sized feather up in the air. "I made sure Gregory was properly dressed for the journey." "I may not have eyes," the mole added, "but the goggles are rather roomy." Susie laughed. Gregory was quickly becoming her favorite. Charlie asked his question next. "How did you learn to talk?" "I studied hard and learned how, just like you," Archibald said. "It was very difficult. You see, animals on this side of the earth spend all their time eating and sleeping and chasing their tails. Animals like us on the inside are good students." Charlie was skeptical. "The inside of what?" "Follow me and I'll show you," the robin replied. He turned his head around and the shadows shifted on the basement walls. Gregory plodded down into the heart of the basement with Archibald plopped on his head, directing him where to go. Charlie and Susie followed a few paces behind. They watched as the mole almost slipped on the sloping dirt. "Watch your footing," Archibald told him sharply. Meanwhile, Susie whispered to her brother, "What do you think, Charlie?" "I think we ought to set traps and sell them to the circus," he joked. "That's mean," Susie snapped back. "I was just kidding," Charlie groaned. But Susie could tell that her brother was putting on an attitude. Even though meeting the robin and the mole was the most exciting thing that had ever happened at Grandpa's house, the truth was neither of them was having any fun. Charlie did not want to admit he had been wrong about talking animals. To him, everything they said about the inside of the earth and giant eagle kings and so on sounded like gibberish. And it was very hard for Susie to enjoy it when her brother acted like a know-it-all. Still, curiosity got the better of them both. As they followed the mole, the basement ceiling came lower and lower until they all had to stoop down. Archibald hopped off Gregory's hat and pointed to a dark hole. Gregory aimed his headlamp at it. The kids watched the light descend down a long, earthy tunnel. It was a tight fit, not enough room to stretch your arms out, and the kids could not see the tunnel's end. "What's in there?" Charlie asked impatiently. "What's the difficult part to explain?" Gregory replied. "It leads down to another world inside the earth with trees, mountains, and oceans of its own. It even has a sky and a sun." "A sun? In the middle of the earth?" Charlie said. "Exactly," the robin rejoined. "The earth's core is really a beautiful sun covered in layers of white clouds. That's where I live, in the clouded kingdom." "And there are trees and mountains too?" Susie said. "That's where I live," the mole smiled, "in the heartlands." The robin concluded, "Everyone here thinks the earth is filled with rocks and lava. But when we get there, you'll see that the earth is as hollow as a balloon with only a thin layer of crust that separates the outside from the inside. Every kingdom and land inside the earth, everything under the bright center sun, we call the Empyrean." "The Empyrean," repeated Susie in awe. At that moment, it was the most majestic word she had ever heard. She considered for a split second that it would be worth crawling through that dreadful hole just to peek at the sun and sky inside. Her brother Charlie frowned. This did not square with anything he had learned in school, but his school had been wrong about talking animals. He wanted to know for himself. He had a sudden urge to run ahead and explore the passageway alone. "Unfortunately," Archibald said, "Gregory and I don't have time to say anything more. We're on a time schedule, you see. Traveling underground is rather like catching the bus. One must be sensitive to the traffic and the weather. So are you all packed and ready to go under the earth and to the Empyrean?" "But we can't come," Susie blurted out. "What would Grandpa think? When he wakes up from his nap, he'll wonder where we went." "We won't be gone that long," the robin reasoned. "Besides, the Eagle King assured me that your grandpa will remain sleeping till you get back. Oh, and I almost forgot. The king gave me a letter to give to you, Gregory." The mole reached into his dingy yellow pocket and pulled out a small envelope. It was not the kind that you lick with your tongue. Rather, it had a royal seal made with the drippings of candle wax. The seal was ruby red and stamped with the symbol of a great bird. On the front were both the kids' names. Gregory gave it to Charlie. "Open it up," he said excitedly. "It has the seal of the Sunbird on it, so it must be important. Archie let me carry it for him, so long as I promised I wouldn't read it myself." In that instant, the kids forgot all about their fears. Neither of them had ever received a letter in the mail before, except for birthday cards. Those don't really count. And this letter had been delivered by a couple eccentric animals from a post office beneath the earth. It held a secret for their eyes only. Charlie tore off the seal and removed the letter inside. It shimmered even in the poor light. Susie watched enviously as her brother unfolded the letter and looked it over. "It's blank!" he cried. They held it up to Gregory's headlamp. Indeed, there was nothing written on the paper. Nothing at all. "Well, what did you expect?" the robin twittered. "Letters written by the Sunbird can only be read in a special kind of light. His light. You will simply have to come with me to the Clouded Kingdom if you want to read what is on the page." The mole gasped with pleasure. "Holy moly! Let's go now!" Charlie, however, did not know what to think. He fingered the compass nervously in his pocket. The Sunbird was the name of the mythical bird on Grandpa's compass. Had the same design also been on the letter's wax seal? He looked hard at the red-vested robin with the golden feather. Royalty or not, could they trust him? What did this Sunbird want with him and his sister? Now everyone was getting impatient. Archibald fluttered his wings, poised at the edge of the dark tunnel. There's always more to discuss, but never enough actual progress. If we don't hurry, we'll miss the passage back, and then we'll all be stuck underground. The children did not know what to do. Behind her, Susie could make out the faint outline of the basement door. All the simplicity of Grandpa's house was locked beyond her reach. Before her, the hole burrowed away into the unknown. Squeezing into that tunnel would be no fun, yet she longed to see the clouded kingdom and the Sunbird very much. She would not go alone. "Let's do it, bro," she finally said. "As long as we're back for dinner," Charlie agreed, stuffing the letter into his pocket. "Then we're off!" Archibald cried. With that, the dutiful Robin dived into the narrow hole. He disappeared in a blur of color. Chapter 3. To the Bottom of the Earth. For the next minute, both kids could only stare at the narrow hole they were about to crawl into. Gregory pulled the oversized yellow helmet off his head and snorted. "Look on the bright side. We'll definitely get to know each other better, cramped in these quarters. Who's first?" He prodded the kids toward the narrow opening. Charlie and Susie argued about who would be the first to go in. "If we're going to make the journey together," Gregory interrupted, "we'll all have to do our part. Archie sets the pace. I do the digging. That leaves one of you to lead and watch for potholes and pitfalls, while the other keeps track of the time. What'll it be?" "Well, I have a watch," Susie said. It was a nice silver wristwatch Mom and Dad gave her for Christmas. "Charlie, you'd better take the lead." Usually Charlie enjoyed being first, but now that the time had come to squeeze into the tunnel, he was having second thoughts. Gregory handed him the headlamp, which was just about Charlie's size. Sensing his delay, the whiskery mole leaned in and whispered, "The leader has got a special role, Charlie Guy. He's got to be on guard against against the black-eyed worms that dwell deep underground. They're an ugly breed that would swarm us if they got the chance. If you see one, stamp it out quick. Or just give it to Archie. He's a bird, and he likes that kind of stuff. But don't tell your sister. I don't want her to worry." From that point on, Charlie understood that he needed to look out for his younger sister. Though he was not much older, he was soon to graduate elementary school, and that made him ready for this special task. He buckled the hard hat and aimed the headlamp. He would squash any worm he found, whether it had eyes or not. Charlie ducked into the tunnel. On all sides, it was hard-packed dirt and tree roots and rocks. At first, Charlie had to crawl on his hands and knees, but pretty soon he could walk with his head tucked down. The smell of earth was strong and musty. The earth felt caked on the inside of his nostrils. Being in such a tight place made it tough to breathe, as if the pressures of the mountain were squeezing your lungs. Charlie pushed forward. Swirling particles blew through the beam of light that came from his helmet. Susie followed him inside. She was able to stand up almost immediately because she was shorter than her brother. Turning her head, she glanced at the opening behind her. It got smaller and smaller as they went. She feared that they may never get back outside to the open spaces again. Lastly, the mole came waddling on all fours. He seemed to know what she was thinking. "Though we're blind as bats, we moles tell each other to approach life face forward. Don't you think we're afraid every minute of crashing into a wall or falling over a ditch? Even so, we can't walk in fear. When it's our time, and that's that." Susie did not quite understand what he had said, but it comforted her. She had become quite fond of Gregory and felt safe knowing that he was right behind her. From deep within, Archibald called, "Hurry on! Hurry on!" He had already flown way ahead. His chirping voice echoed up the earthy tube. Down they began their descent. The dry dirt walls near the opening quickly turned into coal clay walls 20 feet down. Charlie almost hit his head on a water pipe that stuck out of the ceiling. Susie thought she saw the white bones of a prehistoric animal hidden in the floor. They were now 100 feet down. The dangling roots of the deepest trees brushed against her hair. Now they were 200 feet down. The moisture in the air was cool and clammy on their skin. It smelled stale. The clay walls hardened into stony gray walls that looked like the pillars of an ancient ruin. "This is as deep as many people have dug," Gregory said. "Some have dug farther, but only we moles have dug all the way. Digging through dirt and clay is easy, but once you get to the rock of the earth's crust, it takes years and years." "How much longer do we have?" Susie asked. "Archie would know that. I've never kept track myself," Gregory said. "But if I had to guess, we probably have several hours of walking to get to the bottom of the earth. Isn't it great?" This news disappointed the kids. Moles may appreciate the underground, but most people find it dreadful. They were already getting pebbles in their shoes, and they had to stop often to empty them out. On the bright side, as Gregory would say, the tight tunnel had now grown in size. Charlie could stretch out, and Susie could even jump without hitting her head. The weak light on Charlie's hard hat did less to illumine the walls. The dim passage ahead continued to slope down into uncertainty. Susie was getting dizzy. Though there were fewer twists and turns in the tunnel now, the lack of light made her feel trapped and lonely. Being underground had a way of making you feel alone. Charlie stepped back from his lead to join the other two. They clung close together. Susie wondered if Archibald was all right. He was still far ahead, and no one could see him. Every once in a while, though, the kids heard bird whistling echo up the tunnel, so they assumed Archie was all right. It was very quiet in the belly of the earth, all except for the shuffling of their feet. Mom always said a good conversation makes the journey go faster, so Susie broke the silence. "Gregory, how big is your family?" "Enormous," he said proudly. "I'm a retired grandpa of 82 mole children. I passed the family business on to them years ago, just as my father did to me. I come from a large family of subterranean architects, the Diggery-Doos. My mole ancestors dug this passage through the rock long ago. Our main work is in building houses underground where the rest of the moles live. We pack the dirt to form walls, then we carve out the inside of the building like a pumpkin. Moles like a lot of space to move around, and they don't care much for decorations. In the end, the whole neighborhood looks solid brown and boring, just like we like it. The Diggery-Doos have created quite a name for themselves, but as I said, I'm retired." "What do you do now?" Susie wondered. "I wait," Gregory replied mysteriously. "Listen, I'll tell you a story if we can keep the pace up. Archie would say we're dragging behind, but never mind him. And Charlie, now would be a good time to keep an eye out for those things I told you about." "I've been looking," Charlie said. So far, he had seen nothing. No black-eyed worms, no bugs, and not even a pothole. His job was dull indeed. Gregory began his story. "Long ago, one of my favorite things to do was lay out in the sun. I would find a sunny patch between the forest trees and breathe in the fresh air. They say back then that the heartlands was thick with trees, lush and alive. I never saw it, of course, and when the sun warmed my fur, I felt so happy that I could leap over a mountain. The sad truth today, Susie girl, is that I haven't felt the sun for years." "What happened?" she asked. "Many years ago, an evil magician found his way into the Empyrean. He snuck into the castle at the peak of the White Mountain. He stole the throne and all its powers for himself. Before anyone knew what had happened, the magician covered the sky with dark magic. Now a great black veil separates the heartlands from the clouded kingdom. It prevents the sun from shining down on my home. It's rather depressing, Gregory said bitterly. Charlie was very interested now that magic was involved. Why don't you just learn some magic and fight back? He suggested cunningly. Oh, it's not that easy, the mole patiently replied. The Sunbird is strictly forbidden magic in the Empyrean, and no one but the magician would defy the Sunbird's rule. After all, magic only makes the magician more powerful. But there are days I wish the Sunbird would finally destroy the magician and restore order to the Empyrean. But that time has not yet come. He has his reasons. All he can do in the Heartlands is wait. I'll bet I could stop the magician myself, Charlie said. Before Gregory could respond, the floor began to quake. Charlie and Susie fell off their feet and the headlamp smashed to the ground. For a second, it was completely dark. The kids could hear the rumbling sound of earth over their heads as if an airplane engine was flying by. It passed from right to left and seemed to be right on top of them. The rocks rolled and the dirt settled. Finally, everything stopped. Charlie tapped the headlamp several times, and luckily it came back on. He and Susie helped brush the dirt off of each other's backs. And a moment later, Archibald came flying back up the tunnel. Did you hear that? He chirped impatiently, perching on Charlie's hat. Oh, that was close. What? Does anyone have the time? Susie realized this was her responsibility. She quickly read the face of her watch. It's 4:30, she said. Not a typical time, but perhaps it's ahead of schedule, Archibald reasoned. See what I mean about underground traffic? Thankfully, no one was hurt. What was that? Asked Charlie, dumbfounded. I believe it was a giant worm burrowing by, Archibald replied. A worm? Charlie could not shake the feeling it had come because of something he said. Archibald stayed close by the group now. The kids were out of breath from walking, but they were getting closer with every step. Meanwhile, the tunnel they were hiking in got larger and larger. Soon, it was so enormous that Charlie's headlamp was useless. It was like shining a flashlight at the night sky. As he could see only a few paces ahead, Charlie halted. How will we know where we're going? He was saying, when suddenly the whole cave began to glow faintly with light. Had his eyes adjusted to the underground darkness? Charlie could faintly see silvery white patches running through the rock. Charlie, look! Susie reached forward and touched the wall. The white glow came from a cloudy substance that appeared to be growing on the rock. She scooped a wisp of it in her hand. It smelled sweet like roses. Archibald clarified the matter. These are bits of cloud from the clouded kingdom. In the Empyrean, clouds are thick enough to stand on, and they soak up the sunshine. When they grow too big, they need to be trimmed like trees. We have cloud pecker birds that do our gardening. When the clouds are cut, the trimmings fall to the surface, and sometimes we bring them down here. The light they absorb still glows within them. It helps some of us see this far underground. Susie marveled at the bit of cloud in her hand. It was like cotton candy, just as she had always pictured clouds to be. It even warmed the palm of her hand. Deep in the center, she watched the sunlight dance in tiny flames. Hurry on, Archibald called to her. Susie saw the other three were far ahead of her. She ran to catch up, gripping the cloud in her hand. When she reached them, Susie was out of breath and her hand was empty. Had she dropped the cloud, or had it vanished into thin air? The cave broke in several directions here. At the crossroads, Archibald perched on a signpost wedged into the ground. The sign read in black scribbles, 1 mile to the brink, the point of no return. The point of no return? Charlie repeated. He looked worried. Rather dramatic, isn't it? The robin panted. If you haven't noticed yet, our air is running out. If we don't keep going down, we won't have enough air to make it back to the surface." They had not noticed until now. Susie had not recovered her breath from running to catch up with the others. Charlie, too, felt like he had just biked over a big hill. "All the more reason to hurry on," Archibald stated. Susie could see his chest laboring as he took several tiny breaths each second. They took the left tunnel at the crossroads and began to descend at a sharper angle. Gregory took the lead so that he could guide them the rest of the way. Every minute they were coming to another split, but the mole, blind as he was, seemed to know every right turn. Charlie and Susie both wanted to slow the pace. Their sides hurt, their lungs hurt, their feet hurt, and their heads hurt. But Gregory pushed them along, saying, "Can't stop now. It wouldn't be healthy, and not to mention Archie would be upset." The tunnel now became a great cavern. The silvery clouds cascaded down the walls like waterfalls and piled up on the floors like foam. The whole place glistened in pale light. The kids would have liked to appreciate it, but they were too intent on getting to a place where they could breathe easily again. All of a sudden, Charlie yelled, "Stop!" Everyone stopped in their tracks. They were on the edge of a cliff. "Good job, Charlie Guy. You did your job," Gregory said proudly. It was true. Charlie had found an enormous pitfall. The four travelers stood on top of the brink, which Archibald explained is the bottommost part of the continent. The stony floor dropped away at their feet and disappeared into a long, dark shaft. To one side, a flight of narrow steps had been chiseled out of the rock. The steps spiraled down and down. Far below, they could hear the sound of rushing water. The air smelled salty. It had to be the ocean. "If you can picture it," Archibald explained, "the continents of the earth float on the oceans of the Empyrean. In the same way, the ocean floor of the earth is really the underside of our continents in the Empyrean. You see?" The kids were hopelessly confused. "Don't try to explain it, Archie," said Gregory. "It would take far too long, and they'd rather see it firsthand." "Righto," Archibald agreed. "Now this is why we had to hurry. We need to jump down this chute into the ocean if we are going to make it to the other side." "Why don't we use the stairs?" Charlie insisted. "The stairs are only for climbing up," the robin answered. "We must jump to gather the momentum to shoot us straight through the water and into the Empyrean. But as it gets late, the tide gets stronger. The currents are almost too strong to jump through. If we are not quick about it, the currents will keep us too long underwater." "Oh, I'm ready for anything," Charlie announced. "But what if I can't hold my breath?" Susie cried. It was hard enough trying to hold your breath in the pool. Now she had to leap off of a high dive while she was already panting for air. Susie had a worried tone in her voice that showed she wished she had never come. Gregory took her hand. His paws were soft pads on her skin, and he squeezed her gently. "You do know how to swim, don't you?" he said, and Susie nodded. "When you hit the water, just swim up to the surface. And look on the bright side. It will all be worth it when you read that letter." "Here," Archibald offered. "Let me go first." The robin flew through the air in a red arc and dived down the dark chute. Moments later, the three at the top heard a splash. "He's in the lands of the Empyrean now," Gregory said happily. "Let's go. This is my favorite part." Charlie and Susie and the mole got into a row, and the mole began to count down. 10, 9, 8, 7. Susie shivered all over. She would have turned and ran all the way back to Grandpa's house, but she knew she'd never be able to find her way back. Besides, her curiosity to look over the edge was too strong. Down in the swirling ocean, she saw a faint dancing light, like the one she had seen in the cloud. 4, 3, 2. For a second, she caught a glimpse of a fiery plume, the crown of a magnificent bird shining in the waters below. Her eyes met his. Was it the Sunbird? Awe and courage swelled in her heart. It was enough to keep her rooted in place till the final command to jump. "Don't forget to hold your breath," Gregory cried, and suddenly Susie found that she was leaping off the brink and falling. She would have screamed, but she remembered what Gregory said, and she took a deep breath. The cold salt water hit her with a shock. She was underwater, and the current seemed to flip her upside down. It was like spinning round and round in a washing machine, or as Charlie put it, passing through a force field. Finally, she remembered to swim up. Susie feared that the currents may have mixed up her sense of direction. She could be swimming down instead, but there was no time to panic. She was running out of breath. With one last push, Susie broke through the surface of the water. What she saw was beyond anything she could have imagined. All right. We'll stop there at the end of chapter 3 and pick it up again next week. Thank you so much for joining me for this adventurous tale, and I'm excited to read this book after so many years of it sitting on a shelf. All right, everyone, have a good night.